Here's a problem that should be impossible. You're in a canoe in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific covers about a third of the entire planet. In every direction, there is nothing but water for weeks. Somewhere out there is an island. It might be 2 miles wide. You have no map, no compass, no instruments at all. Find it. That was a solved problem thousands of years ago. Polynesian sailors found and settled almost every island out there, long before Europeans could sail out of sight of land safely. And the way they did it is genuinely one of the most impressive things humans have ever figured out. First, let's be honest about how hard this actually is. On land, you can navigate by looking at things. A mountain, a river, a coastline, something that stays put. The open ocean has none of that. Every direction looks identical. Water, sky, horizon. And the water itself is moving. Currents push you sideways. You can be sailing straight and still end up somewhere else. Now add the size of the target. Hawaii to Tahiti is roughly 2,500 miles of open water. That's like crossing the United States, except there's no ground. And if you miss your island, there's often nothing behind it. You just keep going until you run out of food. So this isn't a puzzle, it's life or death, every single trip. So how do you solve it? The first tool is the sky. And this is more precise than people expect. Here's the key fact. Stars aren't random. Each star rises at the same spot on the horizon every night, and it sets at the same spot on the other side. So the horizon becomes a giant circle of fixed points. Navigators divided that circle into 32 sections. They call them houses. Each star has a house it comes out of. And here's the part that gets me. This compass isn't an object. There's nothing to hold, nothing to drop overboard. It's memorized. The whole thing lives inside the navigator's head. One master navigator had memorized over 150 stars and their paths. And you use them in sequence through the night. You pick a star low on the horizon and steer toward it. But as the night goes on, that star climbs too high to be useful. So you switch to the next star rising in the same house. You might do that 2 or 3 times in one night. It's a chain of stars, all pointing the same way. But there's an obvious problem with using stars. They don't work in the daytime, and they don't work under clouds. So what do you do during a week of overcast weather? This is where it stops being clever and starts being incredible. Because they use the waves. Not the little choppy waves the local wind is making. The big, slow swells underneath them. Those swells are made by wind systems hundreds of miles away. And they keep rolling in a steady direction for days at a time. Which makes them direction lines, running across the whole ocean. Usually, there are several different swells crossing each other, each one coming from a different weather system, in a different direction. A trained navigator can tell them apart. And not by looking at the water, by feeling the canoe. Each swell rocks the boat in its own particular way. The rhythm, the angle, the pitch, and the roll. The master navigator who guided the famous 1976 voyage was known for lying down in the hull of the canoe. Not to rest, to read the ocean through his own body. He could tell you which way you were going with his eyes shut. In the dark, under clouds, with no instruments. There's a third piece, and it's the hardest one. The navigator has to know where the canoe is, at all times. Not roughly, continuously, for the entire voyage. And nothing gets written down. There's no log, no chart. It's all held in their head, updated hour by hour. Which means the navigator barely sleeps. On that 1976 voyage, he rarely slept more than a couple hours at a time, for over a month. Because if he lost track, even briefly, nobody could recover it. There was no backup. He was the instrument. Okay, last piece. Actually finding the island. Because holding a direction for a month still leaves a huge problem. A small island is a tiny target in an enormous ocean. But here's the trick. Islands are bigger than they look. Not physically, but in the signs they give off. Start with birds. Some seabirds sleep on land every night. They fly out to fish at dawn and go home at sunset. So if you spot them heading somewhere in the evening, they are pointing straight at land. Follow the birds. Then clouds. Land heats up faster than water. So clouds stack up and sit still over an island. A cloud that isn't moving usually means land underneath it. And here's my favorite one. Lagoons are bright turquoise. That color reflects up onto the bottom of the clouds. So the cloud gets a faint green tint underneath. You can see that from far beyond the island itself. Add all of that together, and the island stops being 2 miles wide. It becomes a target 30 or 40 miles across, which is a target you can actually hit. Now here's the part that makes me a little angry. For a long time, a lot of Western scholars refused to believe this. They argued Pacific Islanders couldn't have navigated on purpose. The popular theory was that they drifted there by accident, blown off course, lucky, not skilled. The problem was that almost nobody could still do it. The knowledge had nearly died out across the Pacific. But on one small island in Micronesia, it survived. A navigator named Piailug had learned the old system from his grandfather. He started as a small child, studying pieces of coral laid out on the ground to represent the stars. So in 1976, they built a traditional double-hulled canoe, and they sailed it from Hawaii to Tahiti. No instruments. 2,500 miles, 34 days at sea, and they arrived exactly where they intended to. That ended the argument, permanently. But the part of this that actually stays with me isn't the voyage. It's what that navigator chose to do. Traditionally, this knowledge stayed inside the family and the island. It took decades to learn. It was passed down carefully. And by his lifetime, he was one of the last people who had it. So he made a decision. He taught outsiders. He decided he'd rather share it than let it die with him. And because he did, it's being taught again all over the Pacific. Kids are learning the star houses right now. The most sophisticated navigation system ever built without technology almost disappeared completely. And it survived because one man decided to give it away. If you like the stuff nobody explains properly, you're in the right place. Subscribe. We do this every week.